thank you for joining us again. And we will now be discussing the different approaches used to understand digital policy and the work of Geneva-based actors. And with us today, we have Jovan, whom I've introduced earlier, Executive Director of Diplo and Head of the Geneva Internet Platform, organizers of today's event, Professor Michael Kende, Visiting Professor at the Graduate Institute and Senior Advisor at Analysys Mason, and Chengetai Masango, who's the head at the UN Secretariat of the Internet Governance Forum. So to start with, I would like to ask the three of you, from the work that you have been doing on the mapping initiatives and from your experience based on this work, which approaches are the most useful for understanding digital Geneva? And before I give you the floor, I would like to invite all the participants, all our colleagues here to share comments or questions in the chat, and our chat moderator will pick them up. And to our panelists, can I please ask you to keep the interventions short, as our session is around 15 to 20 minutes from now. So who would like to start off with discussing or with sharing with us the approaches which are most useful based on your work and your experience?
I can talk a little about some work I've been doing. Many of you may know the Fondation pour Genève, which helps to highlight and promote International Geneva, and they've started a new series of reports on centers of excellence in Geneva. The first one, somewhat prophetically, was the healthcare sector based around the WHO, which came out late last year. And now they've asked me to write a report on internet governance in Geneva from my role here at the Graduate Institute. So I have a bit of practical experience with the mapping, and of course mapping and having a big picture helps. And your platform, the Geneva Internet Platform's observatory, was very helpful, having all the issues described and all of the actors, although it goes beyond Geneva. I think where it got a little more complicated was when you go to the actors themselves, to the websites, they seem to be quite shy about promoting what they're doing in digital Geneva and the digital issues. I had to rely a lot more on interviews and personal contacts than being able to find things on the website. So I would urge all the organizations to be more forthcoming, to have sections that are easy to find so you don't need to know the keywords, what's going on, where the collaboration and where the efforts are in Geneva on digital or internet issues, and that would also help map and weave things together if it's easier to find. So that would be my suggestion.
Sure. Basic on Michael's point, one element in the mapping on this exercise is to combine, let's say, broader view, broader context, more academic context with very practical context. And what is extremely important is to have various types of mappings. You see how today's event is organized, seeing the same issue from different perspectives, from perspective of permanent mission, international organization, media, and academia. In this context, we have been mapping for the last almost 20 years, and the first mapping of Geneva scene was done when the GIP was established for the Swiss Federal Department, and now we are basically finalizing the next, what we call the Geneva Digital Atlas. You can see it. It's shared here the document, and we prepared the pilot coverage of World Health Organization. And what Michael just mentioned, it's very good organization in terms of the website and the data, especially now with COVID. It's still not easy to have one entry point. Therefore, you have digital policy issues on data and artificial intelligence in the Atlas, and every issue is then supported by the question of policy documents. Then you have electromagnetic field, online gaming, which is a big issue, but it's not seen sometimes from outside. Domain names, .health, .doctors. Net neutrality question is, how to ensure the quality of traffic when there are telesurgeries or on the distance. And you see that suddenly you have all plethora of the questions, which are essentially, to the large extent, digital questions. Then these questions connect to what is done by ITU or Human Rights Council of Privacy or ISO. And that mapping, that interlinkages are crucial. Because if they discuss, let's say, only online gaming as an issue per se, as a potential classification of diseases or condition, if they don't consider what is done in the gaming industry on e-commerce or data protection, then you have the completely sort of a twisted view. And I think this is the major challenge. WHO is a quite impressive organization in terms of digital coverage. And one of the ideas behind Digital Atlas is to encourage actors to start moving and making these connections within the international organization sector, but also beyond, towards civil society, towards companies, towards industry association and other actors. And we will be basically completing it soon. Technologically speaking, we used our taxonomy plus artificial intelligence analysis of documents. Therefore, we tried what Michael mentioned. It is difficult to get data from the analysis of documents, and it's really exciting exercise. Over.
That's one thing I wanted to mention. I mean, dialing back to the beginning, you know, when we first discussed the taxonomy and the dotted dictionary of how to describe the issues. I think it's very, very important to advertise that and make sure that everybody knows about it and get the largest number of people using that to describe what they're looking for or what they are doing. I mean, just for the idea, for instance, when people are submitting in, you know, workshops, sessions, or issues, they're using so many different terms to describe the same thing, and it is a little bit of a problem for us, and it takes a lot of our time, a lot of the Secretariat's time, saying that, okay, when they're talking about this, they're really talking about this, and these, you know, issues or these tags that they're putting should actually come together. So I think at a starting point, we really should advertise your great taxonomy.
Thank you. Chengetai, Stefan, just can add on this point. This element of confusion is becoming a major problem. Chengetai mentioned, but I'll tell you one example. You have on diplomacy, you have cyber diplomacy, tech diplomacy, digital diplomacy, e-diplomacy, virtual diplomacy. You go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and everybody argues that they are doing the right e-digital diplomacy. And this confusion exists in all fields, in AI, in cybersecurity. And very often, it is becoming a bit dangerous, people associate with a particular term position or their projects or their course that they teach. And then you have a build-up of the narrative, which is not often related to reality. Therefore, terminological issue and taxonomy issue is becoming of the direct and practical concern. Over.
Thanks, Jovan. And there seems to be an underlying theme here, which is the use of a common taxonomy for all, which is great. Let's delve a little bit deeper into the Geneva landscape. And Jovan, maybe you can help us understand how the Geneva policy landscape is evolving in Geneva currently. So what has been your experience in seeing digital Geneva tackle the issues, let's say 10 years ago to now? What is the difference? And maybe how do you see the landscape evolving in a few years from now?
A few highlights, thank you, Steph. More and more calls from the capital to the missions to do something, because somehow they associate Geneva, because of mainly ITU, with digital. Therefore, missions are called from capitals to do something. Therefore, there will be increasing pressure on missions, and it is especially challenging for small and developing countries with 2 or 3 diplomats who are already Renaissance diplomats, covering everything from trade to humanitarian intellectual property. This is the first point. The second point is that digital is mainstreaming. Therefore, health is not anymore just health. It's not any more digital health, it's becoming just health. Digital commerce is not digital commerce, it's becoming commerce. Therefore, over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll have mainstreaming on digital into the activities, traditional policy issues. WHO health, WTO trade, humanitarian, WIPO, and other issues. Those are two trends that we can and probably the third, always one has to have 3 aspects, is while we are digging deeper and deeper into specific issues, let's say 5G or online gaming, we are basically reducing chances to have the cross-cutting coverage. Because you have depth of the coverage, which is becoming increasingly complex. Just see, for example, number of the working groups in the ITU, covering extremely important issues. But they are going deeper and deeper. And it is reducing chance to have the horizontal coverage. Let's say 5G has so many working groups, but what about the impact of the small standardization aspect of 5G on human rights or on e-commerce, on cybersecurity? That will be the major challenge. How to make this geometry between depth of coverage, specialization, and cross coverage.
Thanks, Jovan. It also ties up with what Michael said initially, that the organizations are shy in describing what they're doing in digital policy. And we saw a comment from Richard Hill on that. And I'm scrolling through the chat. There's also a good point from Ginger, who's asking, is the translation between silos, so between the policy silos, now more important than the translation between languages? So there again, we have the link or we have the issue of interlinkages between the work of different organizations plus the interlinkages between the policy areas. So the importance of going beyond the silos, of overcoming the silos is important. Any reactions to that?
Well, I don't want to monopolize. I'm sure that Michael and the Chengetai can reflect extremely well on this question.
Yeah, I think that that's true. There are some silos, but I think that there's a few areas. I mean, from the work I've done, and I can say that I wish that the digital atlas had been prepared when I was doing the work. I think that would have helped quite a bit. But I mean, from the work that I've been doing, there are one of the big centers of or hubs of excellence that's emerging here in Geneva is cybersecurity, which is going to cut across everything. So in some sense, it could be viewed as a silo, but it really cut across everything. Digital health, all of the aspects of anything with money online, the Libra, a lot of this is going to cover it. And I think that and other kind of hubs of excellence, like there's also not e-commerce, that's been well taken care of with Torbjorn's work, but with digital rights also could be focused on a little more here. And I think that if there were some conferences or ways of highlighting how all of the work being done in Geneva on cybersecurity spreads across all of the sectors, I think that would be very important to continue to highlight what is happening here in Geneva.
Thanks, Michael. And I think, yes, sure, Jovan, please go ahead.
Steph, and Michael is coming from Graduate Institute, and we are also teaching a lot. Probably one of the challenges will be to prepare future officials, current students, and diplomats during the training to cover these issues in cross-cutting way. Because once they are in the mission, they have to cover WHO. There is less time to step back and to try to create this connection. And probably we'll need some sort of a facilitation of this connections. There is a proposal in the high-level panel map on the IGF Plus to have a so-called connection accelerator. I forgot all of it. And there is a need to accelerate these connections and to have somebody, boundary spanners, that's the right term, people who can see what's going on behind the wall in the mission or in the next organization. And from our experience, it's simply amazing how many interesting things are happening in Geneva. Only in this building behind me, You have on the 8th floor, IPCC with the leading AI studies. You have data centers on the, I think, 6th floor. You have the fascinating data and AI expertise, and you can find it in WHO and many other organizations, but they're somehow not intentionally hidden, not connected with the other actors. Therefore, that's probably the major challenge ahead of us.
Thank you, Jovan. I'll take it a step further by posing a challenge for the next breakout session, although we still have some minutes left for here in the plenary. But in the next breakout session, I invite you, I encourage you to think not only on the policy areas that you will be discussing, for instance, how to navigate cybersecurity, e-commerce, etc., but how to navigate these issues in relation to even other issues that affect them directly. So that's there goes a challenge for the next discussion. But back to this discussion, I'm seeing a comments in the chat, and Marilia, I'll focus on your second comment because you asked a very good question. So mapping is very important, but what happens after? So when we understand the connections, how do we change the work based on these findings and interplays? And here I'll take the point a little bit further, and I'll ask perhaps Michael, you can reflect on this. So since the digital landscape in Geneva is extremely rich, but how can we communicate this vibrancy of what is happening in Geneva with other policy hubs or regions out there, for instance, Brussels or Silicon Valley? So can these mapping initiatives or other tools, can they work? How can they work? How can they help us to, let's say, export what is happening in Geneva?
Yeah, well, I think that clearly the digital atlas that you're going to be rolling out soon will help. Hopefully the report that I'm working on for the Fondation. I don't know if everyone knows that Geneva Solutions is a newsletter coming from Heidi.news, a new Swiss newsletter that's going to focus on different sectors in Geneva, including internet governance. My understanding is it'll start in August, and once a week it will cover internet governance issues. That will be a way for us to learn more about what's going on and to educate others about what we're doing. And I do think that we should promote, just coming back on my previous point, the way that UNCTAD and Torbjorn, I see, is on this video conference, have really highlighted the digital for development work with e-commerce. I think that the other hubs like cybersecurity, where there's so much going on now in Geneva, and it really cuts across everything. You can't think about a lot of these other issues without first asking the question about privacy and data protection. Should have get together all of the different institutions working on that, put together conferences, and start to promote outside of Geneva what's going on in that. The same could be done for digital rights, I think, and to build on the various hubs that are really cross-cutting across all the issues that we're going to be dealing with.
Thank you, Michael. I'll move to a different point. I saw a question from Torbjorn. There was a confirmation there, but Jovan, the question is basically for you. Can organizations contribute to the digital atlas of Geneva? So if you can explain a little bit what the process is.
Yeah, we will be sending the draft version, initial research, because what I just shared is the basically one segment on the World Health Organization, but you will receive on all other organizations the draft version, and you will have a chance to comment, to provide missing resources, documents. Basically, we are organizing research around three elements. Missing the basic documents, therefore whatever we write has to be based on in the documents. Second point, mechanisms in the organizations that cover a particular issue, let's say on online gaming. And third one, linkages to the other actors. For example, WHO has cooperation on domain names with ICANN. Therefore, these are three segments. We'll ask you to contribute, all international organizations, also Graduate Institute, University of Geneva, and other actors, by 15th of July. And during the summer, we will finalize it and prepare it as a printed document. and also as my AI-driven website. There will be mapping and linkages as sort of a AI-driven engine where there will be ongoing analysis of documents. This is more or less the approach and the next steps. Therefore, you will be receiving email from us later on today or tomorrow with the draft document that we, as external observers, identified in your organization. Over.
Thank you, Jovan, for that. Now, closer to what we've all been going through, I have a question for Chengetai, also related to the changing landscape of digital policy in Geneva. Chengetai, how do you think, in your opinion, has COVID-19 affected the digital policy landscape in Geneva?
Did I unmute myself? I think it has affected it tremendously. I mean, the traditional face-to-face meetings that we've had in Geneva are becoming fully virtual. We had the CSTD and the ITU council meetings. They were fully virtual, and we had our own open consultations, which were virtual. And yes, they did move over to the virtual environment. They did follow the same rules and procedures that they did when they're doing the face-to-face meetings. But interestingly enough, at least for CSTD and the ITU councils, they could not approve any resolutions online. I think the member states, especially maybe the Geneva group, had said that it had to be a physical meeting in order to approve resolutions. So that's one very interesting way that the COVID-19 has affected the meetings in Geneva. And of course, as you know, the substantive focus of our digital meetings all switched over to COVID-19 and how to mitigate the effects of COVID-19, whether it be by telemedicine, etc., and not just focusing on the pandemic, but the infodemic of information, whether it be false information or propaganda that is being spread. And as you know, access and connectivity is coming to the fore, and it is now a prerequisite for basically anything, you know, for health, for education, etc. So I think at least that's one of the benefits, is that people are focusing on access and connectivity as the starting block. I think that's mostly it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chengetai. And I think that might have replied to Ginger's question in the chat. Will the world lose contact with Geneva when it goes back to face-to-face? And the brief answer is not really. There is also a very interesting discussion in the chat, which I'll just very, very briefly summarize, because there have been quite a number of replies. So there was a comment that we may need a new international cyber organization based in Geneva to cover all policy issues related to all layers of the internet. And here I would direct, and also emphasizing what Vladimir replied to this comment, the UN high-level panel on digital cooperation's final report with its 5 recommendations, and the UN Secretary General's roadmap on digital cooperation. We have a few resources there. Maybe my colleagues can post the resources in the chat, and that can help answer the question on what happens next with digital cooperation, with how we connect the dots among what organizations are doing and how to improve the cooperation in digital policy issues. We're running slightly out of time here. Actually, we've taken a few minutes from the next session. So thank you very much, Jovan, Chengetai, and Michael, for this discussion. And now we move on to the breakout sessions again, where we will discuss how to navigate the specific policy areas. So now we're really going down into the issues. So what do existing mapping initiatives tell us about specific digital policy areas, which are, we've identified 4. There are more than that, but for the sake of the limitation of the time, we're discussing cybersecurity, policies, SDGs, e-commerce, and data and AI. And my colleagues here will post the several links to the breakout sessions here. And after the breakout sessions, we will resume in the main hall that is in this room for the final wrap up. So please follow the links, your preferred topic, the links there. And if you're following us on YouTube, you can also find the links on the website meetings.diplomacy.edu. Click on the scroll down for the program, go to the section where we have the program starting at 2:20, and join one of the rooms depending on the topic of interest. So good discussion for everyone, and see you back again here in approximately 25 minutes.